everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to make this Victorian ball. It kind of started at Christmas time that I was going for that vintagey Christmas ball look where you used to put in the sewing pins and the sequins and kind of go around, and it kind of progressed into way more, and here I am halfway through the summer actually doing the video. I had started with one in red to call it an actual vintage Christmas ball, but I'm just going to call it a vintage ball. I wear this necklace a lot. It's a long necklace just on cotton cording, and it is about 32 inches, and all I've done is gone through the ball once it is made. This here is another one that I wear on just a short 16-inch chain, and I keep close by. You can also make these into earrings. They kind of have almost like a disco ball effect, but I think it kind of gives that line to that vintagey look. You can really change up the size of the ball based on the bead that you use in the middle. You could also use different beads as your accents, but I'm going to be using O beads. Here are the O beads in both a 5mm bead and worked on a 3mm bead. So you can see the difference in size. You can do the same thing with a 6mm bead. An 8mm bead is going to get a pretty large ball. So that's kind of up to you what you want to use as your base. You don't even actually see the base that much. With this here, I used a mixed tube of our blue-green check glass. For this one in here, I used 3mm fire polished rounds. I'm going to be changing it up a little bit and using our Potomac crystals. To make the actual base ball, you're only going to need 30 beads. So I'm going to need 30 of these Potomac crystals, and I'm using the Hematite color. These are a 3x4mm bead, and they'll work up nicely. They'll kind of be in between size here. For it, we're also using some O beads. I used O beads on both of these. This one here was the Peridot Vitrol Matte, and this one here is the Crystal Sliperit that I used. And then on both of them, I used the 11 or the 15 O bead to hold the O bead in place. And for that, I used the galvanized silver. I'm going to switch it up, and in addition to the Potomac crystals and the Potomac Rondelles, I'm going to be using the Amethyst Capri Gold, and it has two sides to it. I'm going to play on both sides using both the copper and the amethyst color. And then I'm using the 15 O's here in the white champagne luster color. So it's going to play up that vintagey appearance. Also, I think it'll be nice, even though it's summer, kind of going into fall, it'll be a nice thing to hang on a cording. You can use a black cord, you can use a brown cord, you can make them into beads and actually use them as a centerpiece or on the side of a necklace. The number of O beads that you need to go around your 30 beads is going to be at minimum 30. You can really play up and kind of add more. I'll go over this. This one here, I added a lot more beads, and I actually added it would have been about 60 beads of my O beads. Here I tried to add about 90 O beads, but you can see the difference in size. This would also be a great use for the wavelets if you're doing a large bead, if you're going to do like an 8mm and do an actual beaded ball for a pendant. So I'm going to be using these 3 styles of beads. I also have my size 10 needle, and the packaging on these has changed, that it's a pony rather than lance, but same deal. We sell them in the 25 packs, so it's kind of great because you get 25 needles and you can use them. Again, size 10, but you may want to have a 12 on hand if you plan to go back through a lot and really kind of make your ball really full. I also have some super new glue handy. I have my slip and snip cutters to cut my thread. I'm using .006 green wildfire beading thread, and that's really it. I mean, I can add whatever actual additional cording or anything onto it, but we can get to that towards the end, and I can show you again the different options. I'm working on a bead mat. Right now I'm on a blue bead mat because I thought with the champagne color that the blue would work really well. I might switch up and make it a little bit lighter for you guys to see. I'll kind of start and we'll see which way is easier for you guys to see. So we're going to start actually with just our Potomac crystals. And what I want to do is I want to lay them out in a group of 30. So you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. What you want to do then is put the rest back in the tube, double count. Nothing is more frustrating than when you get done with this and you realize that you have a bead left. Did you do it right? You kind of question yourself. So the second count, I'm going to lay it out in piles of 5 and just make sure I have 6 piles of 5 to get my 30 beads. The next thing I'm going to do is actually thread a needle. And for this project, you're not going to use a ton of thread, but we actually are going to use a fair amount because we are going to be adding on all those O beads to them. So I'm just going to open my thread and pull out the thread here. I'm going to be starting with about 3.5 feet of thread, 4 feet of thread. If you need to add thread, this is a really easy one to add because you can't see it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to snip my thread and I'm going to flatten out my ends. And I'm just flattening those out with a bent needle nose pliers. And that'll make it easier to thread. I have 1 needle threaded, and I'm going to turn over to the other side of my thread and thread another. You can do 2 needles to start. You can do this with 1 needle. I'm going to do 2 needles to start. I think it makes it a little bit easier to follow. This is also the same pattern as the crystal beaded ball. It's just kind of stepped up a notch. So if you do need me to go slower in this, you can also check out the crystal beaded ball. So to get started, I've threaded both needles, and I'm going to start out with my beads in piles. We're going to be adding beads 5 at a time. 5 are going to be in that crystal ball that we're making. However, we're going to be adding them kind of in different increments. So the first one, we're going to actually add 5, and then we're going to be using almost a right angle weave technique, adding 4, then 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. So if you want to, again, you can kind of check out that crystal ball video. You can also check out the Super Duo beaded ball video, and that will have this count for you as well. Or you can pause me, you can slow me down in your YouTube settings. I apologize, I know I speak fast and I'm trying to speak slower. But what I'm going to do to start out with is just put the first set of 5 onto my needle. Doesn't matter right or left, but I'm going to get in the habit of always adding with my right needle. And I'm going to let those beads drop down to the bottom middle of my thread. And I'm so in the habit of having super long thread that I made my tails really long, so I'm going to pull those back a little bit, making sure that those tails are about even so my thread's in the middle, and take those beads into the middle. So I added them with my right needle. I'm always going to be adding beads with the right needle and sewing back through beads with whatever needle is on the left. That needle stays to the right now, and the needle that's on the left is going to crisscross through the 5th bead, creating a circle. Once that happens, the needle that was on the right is now on the left, and the needle that was on the left is now on the right, and I create that little almost floral design with my beads. Now that I have my 5 beads, I'm going to be adding 4 more beads to get another set of 5 because I already have 1 bead that I'm sewn through. I'm going to pick up those 4 beads with my right needle, and with that needle that is on the left, it is going to come over and pass through the last bead that I added with the right needle. This is always going to be the same pattern with that left needle coming over to the right and crisscrossing through the last one. That forces the needle that was on the right hand side to the left and the needle that was on the left to the right. At this point, I'm going to take my left needle here, the one that's on the left side, and I'm going to sew through the bead that's sitting to the left, so the top of that previous unit, and sew through. What that's going to do is join those 2 together. Because I have 2 beads already, I'm going to pick up my right needle and pick up my next pile, which has 3 beads, and I'm going to sew those 3 beads on with my right needle. With my left needle, I'm going to take it back through the bead that is the last one that I added with my right needle. And the needles are going to switch sides. Now that the ambulance has passed, I live by a hospital, so it's always kind of loud. I'm going to take my needle that was on the right, that became my left needle, and go back through the bead that is sitting next to that group of 3. You can always, if you set your beads out in the piles, like I had said, the pre-selected piles, that gives you an idea of how many beads you actually need to join with that left needle. I now have 3 beads in my next pile, so I know I pick up my right needle and add 3 beads. That right needle is just going to kind of hang out there. I move it a little bit to the left. The left needle is going to sew back in a circular form through that last needle, or through that last bead, sorry, and pull. My next group also has 3 beads in it, so I know I'm going to pick up that needle that is now on the left-hand side and join another bead into it. And it's always going to be the top of the point that's closest. I have 2 beads on, so I know my next group of 3 is waiting to go. 3 beads are going to go onto my right needle. That's going to sit back just to the left-hand side a little bit now. The needle that's on the left is going to go back through the 3rd bead that I just added, crisscrossing through, and I give a nice tight pull. My next group sitting here only has 2 beads. That curvature of that rounded ball is starting to happen, and the needle that's on the left-hand side now is going to join 3 beads rather than just 2. We've been joining 2. Now we're going to sew back and join 3. They kind of line up right next to one another, and they're always going to be those tops of those right angle units. I'm going to pick up the 2 beads now with my right needle, letting those drop down, picking up my needle that's on the left, sewing back through, and crisscrossing through that 2nd bead that was added, giving a nice tight pull. And you can see that dome shape is really starting to occur. If you want, you can actually stop here, and that creates a bead cap. So there's another idea for you. My next group has 3 sitting, so I'm going to join that left-hand needle to 1 more bead. I'm going to pick up those 3 beads that are waiting for me with my right needle. Let those drop. Pick up the left needle, sew back through that 3rd bead that I added. Give a nice tight pull. Oh, my fault. I sewed through the 1st bead, not the 3rd bead. Go back through that one, undo that error there. So the needle there, get it back set up, and then go through the 3rd bead, not the 1st bead. Give a nice tight pull, and that gets my next little 5 unit. I'm going to pick up the needle that's on the left, and my next group sitting. My next groups are 2, 2, 2, 1. So I'm going to sew through 2 more beads right along that line with the left needle, joining, so I have 3 beads joining that thread. The needle that's on the right then will pick up the next 2. Needle that's on the left comes over to the right by going through and crisscrossing through that 2nd bead that I added. And give a nice tight pull. The needle that's on the left then will sew through 3 of the beads in the right angle units near it. And that's going to connect those 3 beads. And you can see those units of 5 all starting to occur. Once I have those 3 joined, I'm going to bring up my needle, adding 2 more, holding them in place here. I'm going to take my needle that was on the left to the right by crisscrossing through the 2nd bead that I added, giving a little pull. And that's really starting to make that ball occur. The needle that's on the left now is going to join the 3 beads here that are sitting closest to the top. Oops. Once those are done, I know that I need to add 2 more beads. And we're almost done with our base. So I have 2 more of those crystals on. Needle that's on the left-hand side, coming to the right. That needle that is now on the left-hand side, because I only have 1 crystal left, so my only pile left is 1. I'm going to go back and sew through the top of 4 beads, and that's going to join 4 onto my thread. Give a nice tight pull quick. Tighten up my threads. And then I'm going to add my 5th bead onto my right needle, crisscross through my left, and it's going to complete my circle. And there you have it. So that's your little crystal ball. And the awesome thing about this crystal ball is that you can leave it as it is if you want. You don't have to decorate it more, but you can. And I like to keep them, and I use them a lot actually on the sides of my jewelry. So I'll take some beads, like I have here some marbleized pyrite, which would look awesome with this. And I'll just string these as is, and then kind of as a focal piece on the side, put one of these beaded balls. It's going to look even better when we add some of the O beads to it. So what I'm going to do now is kind of reinforce and link to that last group of 5. My needle that's on the right or left, doesn't matter which one you use, but that group of 5 that I just came out of is nice and tight. The group of 5 next to it is kind of loose and it almost has an opening. So I'm going to take my needle that's on the right, just because that's the one that I picked up, and I'm going to sew back through that group of 5 beads. I'm going to take those 2 thread ends then and just tie a knot. Once I tie that knot, you can see it pulls that bead in together and makes that ball tight. So my ball is now done. So I need to lay out little piles of my O beads as well as my 15-0s. Again, I keep going back and forth whether or not to really show off that Capri gold color or whether or not to kind of tuck that underneath. You're still going to see it because you see the sides of the O beads as well, especially in the larger ball. So you kind of see the different effect that it goes on. So I think I'm going to concentrate on putting my amethyst color to the top and putting that Capri color on the bottom. So it doesn't matter which needle I'm working with here. I have my right and left, and I'm just going to keep them both attached because I'll end up using that much thread. If you wanted to, you could cut them off at this point and start with a different thread. That's up to you. The first thing I'm going to do is sew through my first bead that's closest to my needle. Once I'm coming out my bead, we're not going to overthink it. You're going to add your O bead. And if it is two-sided like this, you want to add whatever side you want showing on the bottom and the top color showing. I added a 15-0 onto my thread, and that's going to hold my O bead in place. Every once in a while you'll get an O bead that the hole's a little bit bigger and the 15 will slip through. So you want to make sure to kind of give it a nice tight pull to see if that will occur. If it doesn't occur, you're ready to move on. If they do have a little bit of a bigger opening, just push it to the side, use it for another project. What I'm going to do now is I have that O bead set off to the side. If I pull and pull, it's not really going to go anywhere because that 15-0 is locking it in place. So just like if you were working almost with a crimp bead, you're going to push the beads, that O bead, down in place next to your crystal ball, and then I'm going to pull that extra wire through, and that's going to get that little vintagey Christmas ball look, that vintage ball in place. My thread and needle, if you remember, is coming out one of my Potomac crystals right there, and I'm going to go straight along my first line of 5 beads here and sew that in. Once I'm coming out again, I'm going to sew on my O bead and my 15-0, go back through the O bead, and then I'm going to continue on with that line over to the next. So basically I'm just following right along my groups of 5, and I'm adding my O bead and my 15 O's in place. Once I have them in place, you can see they're kind of sitting off to the side. I'm going to keep this top open a little bit so that way it's open when I want to add a bead to the top or hang it down from a pendant. You can see I'm going right along that group of 5, and you can skip beads. The fun thing is you can really kind of play this design up. You can make it your own, and you could change the color of the O beads. I'm going to sew through. So now I'm ready to sew through, and I'm coming out right beside that first O bead that I added. So I now have my 5 O beads in place right on the side here. And what I'm going to do then after adding those 5 O beads into place is I'm going to basically go on to the next group of 5. What I'm going to do to decorate it a little bit more is even in this place here where I already have one when it's coming out of a bead, I'm going to add another. That's going to make it more decorated. You don't have to add another, you can keep one to each, but that's up to you. I want my ball to be pretty decorated. I'm going to give a nice tight pull, and then I'm going to pick another group of 5 to continue on with. Adding a bead, sewing through to my next group of 5. And you'll be able to see which group of 5 you're picking up as you work with it. If you don't want to add extra beads and you think that's confusing, you'll end up with 3 beads in the middle of each bead. You can just start off with adding 1 bead and then add your second and third row as you go around. So here I have 4 beads in place, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to add my 5th. Get that back through here. And as I come back through then, I'm at a place where it is joined, and I already have 1. I'm going to add another one, because remember we're going to have eventually 3 going through each section, middle section. Now you can choose whether or not you want to go back to where you started and go back on to the next group of 5, or if you want to go the other direction. I'm going to go back to where I started. Getting that last one in place, you can see it's starting to kind of take shape. And I'm going to add that 3rd bead in place. So this intersection has 3 beads going through it, and I should not need to come back to it. I'm going to now go down to another intersection. So that has 3 right there, little triangle. Going down to another intersection here where I'm going to continue on. And this one already has 1, but I'm going to add my 2nd. And continue on then to another area and another group of 5. So you can see now I'm starting on this little group of 5 here, adding my O, my 15, sewing back through my O and my 15 and continuing on with that group of 5 there. And literally you're just gonna sew all the way around. It'll start to get a little bit busy when you're looking at it and you think, oh my goodness, did I go there yet, or did I not go there yet? You can simply kind of turn to the side and look how many beads you have going through. So here I'm at another cross point after adding those 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in place. And here I'm at another cross point again that only has 1. So I'm getting ready to start another group of 5, adding a 2nd bead into that group. Sewing through another one of the rondelles. I'm at another point where there's already 1 there for a different group of 5, but I'm going to this group of 5, so I'm going to add another bead. sewing through them, and I'm going to continue on to that 5 open right here. So I've already gone through 2 and I have 3 more to add. So I'm just continuing on adding my O beads right along my lines, picking up my beads here that need to have the O beads coming through. You should always see those 5 on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those 5 peaks on each area here. Here I have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to add in the 5th. And you're just going to keep going round and around and around till at each intersection you have your 3 beads. So here I'm at an intersection that only has 1, so I'm going to add another. And I'm going to continue around now each intersection, except for this guy over here. He's lonely, so we'll kind of head over in that direction. Has 1 bead. And as I sew through then, coming out, I'm going to constantly be coming to other areas and other intersections. Oh, forgot to sew back through the O bead. I'm going to come to other areas and other intersections where there's only 1 bead or 2. And as I come to those intersections here, there's just 1, I'm going to add another. You can say constantly, you know, turn to the left or turn to the right. But honestly, by the time you get all the O beads in here and in place, because we're going to be adding, you know, right around 90 beads for those 90 intersections. It gets pretty full. And this is also why I kept this extra. So I've picked up my other thread because my first thread was getting short, and that's why I had that thread on there. And basically I'm just sewing back through, looking at every intersection and kind of which way to go. It's almost like a puzzle. Which way to go that there's not 3 beads. So if I take it back through this bead, there's already 3 there. So I'm going to go the opposite way to where there's 2. And add a 3rd bead in place. When I do get my 3 beads in place, I kind of try to make them into that little triangle of beads. I think it makes it sit better and doesn't look as jumbled when you get to the end. But I'm going to add that next bead in and go over here to where there's only 1. And you're just going to keep going around and around, adding your beads in place. So don't overthink it. Again, if you can't tell whether or not, which if you kind of move everything to the side, it's pretty easy to tell. But if you lose track and you can't tell which beads have 3 and which don't, then that's fine, because if you can't tell, whoever's looking at it on the side won't be able to tell either. But I'm just going to keep sewing back through and getting 3 at every intersection point. So I've gone through now adding my groups of 3 at every intersection, and my ball is nice and full. And you can see the difference of the sizes of the balls with a 3, a 4, and a 5mm bead that's actually in the center of the ball. You can also see how much the beads kind of stick out in between the larger beads. So that's why I was saying the wavelets would look pretty as well if you're going with a bigger bead. But once I get to the top here, I have my 2 threads hanging out, my 2 thread ends. All I'm going to do is basically get them back together. I have a section here where I have to add my last of my 3rd beads, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to sew back towards this tail here on this side. When I get those tails back next to one another and through one of the crystals, and of course I pulled that bead to the side and not through. I'm going to unthread my needle to take care of that one. There's a lot of threads going in there. So originally you could kind of pull your thread out. Once you get going, it's way too many threads through there. And you can see my needles have gotten all bent up as well, just going through. Kind of playing around here. Sometimes after you get through the holes a couple times, the needles do not like to thread anymore. You can just trim down a tiny bit. take your pliers and really flatten that out. And then try to stick your needle back through there. Now that I'm here, I'm going to go back through the O bead, which I didn't before, and get my needle to come out after that rondelle there. And it really wants to go through an O bead, which I'm going to make sure it does not. And that's going to let that last one in place there. Now my threads are right next to one another, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to tie them together. If you want to make a little loop here to attach to, you can do that with one of these extra threads. Those threads are going to tuck nicely inside of your ball, and it's pretty stiff, so if you would want to use it on jewelry, like I was saying, that you could kind of use it on the side of a bead to do a focus. You could do it in the middle. You can just string right through because it's going to keep its shape. Once I have that knot, I'm going to work with my longer thread if I want to do a loop on it. And to do a loop, all I would do is take my longer thread here and add a bunch of beads and make my loop. Here on this loop, I think there's about 16 beads, and all you're going to do is take it through a Potomac rondelle and make your loop back through a Potomac rondelle, and you'd have it. What I'm going to do is actually take it through some wire. So I have some wire sitting here just to show you some variations. With this one here, it was wide enough that I could just take it underneath a bead and attach my loop here. With this one, I made a loop. And with this one here, I have a scrap piece of 18 gauge wire sitting nearby. So I'm going to use that 18 gauge wire and kind of show you what to do. But at this point, if you wanted to, you could cut it off and go this route. You can kind of feed your thread through. With this tighter ball, it might be a little hard to do that. So you may use a piece of wire, or you could make a loop. So that's your choices at this point. That's up to you what you want to do, but I'm going to be taking this little scrap of 18 gauge wire and showing you what I do with it. So I have my scrap piece of 18 gauge wire, and it really wouldn't matter what type of wire, but I'm going to be using this one. And I did grab some round nose pliers, and I have those sitting nearby. What I'm going to do is just make a loop. If you had a head pin, you could also do that with this. And I'm just making an eye pin. If you need help making an eye pin, and sorry, I wasn't really expecting to do this at the start of the video, so if you have some scrap wire sitting around, you can do that, or you can go with these methods as well. Doesn't matter. But I'm just making a small little eye pin. If you need help making an eye pin, we have videos on that. You can go to the little magnifying glass and type in eye pin, and our video on eye pins will show up. And I'm just going to put on another one of my Potomac rondelles. I'm going to go straight through my beaded ball. And if you have that loop there on the end, what you can do is, if you don't want to see it that big, you can actually cut it off. You could add a tassel to it, and you can kind of add beads hanging down from it. That's up to you. Like I said, if you wanted to, you could use a head pin as well. Because I don't have a head pin sitting right near me, I have one, but not close enough, I'm just going to actually take this loop and make it super tiny. And then rather than making it a full circle, I'm just going to take my pliers here and just make it teardrop shaped by squeezing that together. And then it has that teardrop shape. That way at the end I don't see it a ton. If you want to also, you can take it, fold it down on its side. Then when you put the rondelle, it just kind of sits hidden down there underneath. Little kind of fun tricks there. At the top, I'm going to put on another one of my Potomac rondelles to sit on the top. I think I'm also going to decorate it a little bit with some of my O beads. Amethyst side facing up, copper side facing down. I put 3 on, but I'm not crazy about that, so I'm just going to take it off and just do 2. Then what I'm going to do is take my pliers, my round nose pliers, and make a nice big round loop. So that way it'll fit onto my chain that I have sitting here. Cut off my extra wire. And then I'll have it to go on my chain. And there it looks like a fun little vintage ball. Again, kind of a disco ball or a wrecking ball or the vintage ball as I'm calling it, but it gives you some options of what you can do with these. Again, this I would stick close to on a 16-inch neck, or you can put this as an earring. It would look great. You can see it kind of in the palm of my hands. It would look great as an actual earring, so I need to make another one of those. But I think this is really awesome and fun to play around with and fun to wear. It's just a nice, neat idea that you don't see all the time, so it's kind of decorating that crystal ball idea. You can do it also with super duos if you would want to watch the super duo beaded ball video. You can change up to and do different patterns. You could do color blocks where you do 3 of one color and then another color, 3 of that same color, another color, and kind of go around as well. But hopefully this gave you some ideas to use with some extra check glass beads or some extra O beads. You could also do it with the 1 bead or the quad bead, which are square and oval as well. That would look fun. If you're using a bigger bead, check out the wavelets. They would look pretty cool. You could do 1 big wavelet in between each. Maybe I'll do another video even showing that for you guys. But thanks a lot for watching. If you get a chance, you can check out PotomacBeads.com. Check out our locations page, and you can go and gather materials to make these awesome vintage balls. You can also visit us online. If you hit the show more button, if you can't get to one of our stores, we can ship to you online, and there's links to all the different projects or products that are used in this project there. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, and that way you'll get updates when I get a chance to make some new videos for you guys, and also give you product updates on new things we're carrying, new things that you've seen in magazines, and we try to carry most of the new, as much of the new stuff as we can, almost all of it. That way you guys get a first chance to grab some of the new items. So thanks a lot for watching. Happy beading, everyone, and have fun making these antique vintage balls.